Mr. President, distinguished honorable members of the court, it is an honor and privilege to appear in front of the court to present a statement on behalf of the government of the Sultanate of Oman in the oral proceedings concerning the advisory opinion on the legal consequences arising from the policies and practices of Israel in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem. For more than 75 years, the Palestinians have been living under occupation, oppression, injustice, and daily humiliation committed against them by Israelis. Meanwhile, the international community and the international organizations have failed to assist the people of Palestine to realize their aspiration by having their own independent state. Today in Gaza, the world for 4 months is witnessing one of the worst atrocities and acts of genocide in modern times, where more than 25,000 killed and 69,000 wounded, in addition to 2.2 million living under unbearable conditions, being driven from one place to another in a clear violation of international norms. The advisory opinion request. Oman supports United Nations General United Nations Resolution 77/247 of 30 December 2022, in which the Assembly requested the court to render an advisory opinion in relation to two specific issues, namely, A, the legal consequences arising from Israel's ongoing violation of the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination, its prolonged occupation of the Palestinian territory occupied since 1967, including the holy city of Jerusalem, and its measures aimed at altering the demographic composition, character, and status of the Palestinian territories, and from its adoption for related discriminatory legislations and measures. B, Israel's policies and practices referred in paragraph A affect the legal status of the occupation and the legal consequences that arise for all states and the United Nations from this status. The Sultanate of Oman requests that the following issues are taken in account. 1. Violation of the right to self-determination. That the occupation, settlement, and annexation of Palestinian territory occupied since 1967 by Israel obstructs the realization of the Palestinian people inalienable rights, including their right to self-determination and right to return. There is an overwhelming international agreement on the existence of the right to self-determination and its continued denial in the occupied Palestinian territories. The right to self-determination is enshrined inter alia in Article 1(2) of the Charter of the United Nations. The United Nations General Assembly has consistently reaffirmed the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination. The United Nations Security Council has called for an end to the Israeli occupation and the establishment of two states based on the 1967 line. The Human Rights Council consistently recognizes the inalienable, permanent, and qualified right to self-determination of the Palestinian people. Arising from these clear and consistent breaches of the international law in maintaining a 75-year occupation, the court should determine that the government of Israel should bring an immediate and unconditional end to all activities, policies, and laws that prevent and impede Palestinian self-determination, principally by ending the occupation of the Palestinian territory. The court should recognize the clear responsibility on all states to support the establishment of Palestinian self-determination in the line with United Nations resolutions and the United Nations Charter. 2. Prolonged occupation, settlement, and annexation of Palestinian territory. The consistent and systematic and lawful transfer of Israeli citizens to settlements in occupied Palestinian territory over decades is designed to perpetuate the occupation and make it permanent. Related to this policy is the displacement of Palestinians and establishment of coercive system of discrimination, zoning, planning, unlawful land appropriation, arbitrary arrest, and arbitrary violence since 1967. This foreseeable displacement of the occupied people and the transfer of citizens of the occupying power to occupied territory is prohibited under Article 49 of the 4th Geneva Convention on the Protection of Civilian Persons in Time of War. Article 1 of that convention stipulates that every high contracting party to the convention is under an obligation to ensure compliance in all circumstances. The United Nations General Assembly, United Nations Security Council, and United Nations Human Rights Council have consistently and repeatedly condemned Israel's effort to alter the demographic character and status of the occupied Palestinian territories. States' obligations. The international community has an obligation to prevent unlawful annexation of Palestinian land. A fundamental principle of international law, as reflected in the Charter of the United Nations, is that the use of force in any form is prohibited. Consequently, accusation of territory by use of force is illegal. The 75-year occupation and settlement policy of State of Israel is preventing the establishment of contiguous, viable Palestinian state is an affront to international law. The court should find that the legal consequences for the government of Israel in this regard should include the immediate cessation of all illegal acts, including settlements and associated legal and administrative frameworks. Clearly, reparations for and dismantling of illegal structures and legal frameworks is also an imperative. Third states are under a clear obligation not to recognize or assist the illegal situation present in the occupied Palestinian territory. State parties to the Geneva Convention relative to the protection of civilian persons in time of war and under obligation to ensure Israeli compliance with international humanitarian law as embodied in the Convention, including the unlawful transfer of citizens to occupied territories. United Nations General Assembly Resolution 77/25 called upon all states consistent with their obligations under the Charter and relevant Security Council resolutions to pursue a policy of non-recognition, non-cooperation, non-assistance to the Israeli occupation, and to ensure respect for international law in this regard. I would like to conclude that the primary legal consequences arising from Israel's behavior is that there is now a de facto annexation by Israel of the Palestinian territories. There is no legal justification for continuing the Israelis' occupation and denying the Palestinian people right to self-determination. The Sultanate of Oman requests that the following issues are to be taken into account. A. The conduct and practices of an occupying power are well documented and strictly regulated in international law. The Fourth Geneva Convention is clear that an occupying power may not transfer its civilian population to occupied territories. In addition, international law does not provide for permanent occupation or occupation legitimized through the establishment of demographic change through settlement. The 75-year duration of Israeli presence in the occupied Palestinian territories and the persistence policy of settlement renders the Israeli occupation illegal and in breach of the United Nations Charter. B, the court should determine that Israel should bring to an immediate and unconditional end to this unlawful situation. Third states should support these efforts. Thank you very much.